Welcome everyone to another week of LEMD's live educational series. We're so glad you were able to join us this evening where we have the opportunity to all learn and grow together. I like to say here at LEMD, we're not just a telehealth company. We're a company focused on helping people live longer, healthier lives. And our mission goes beyond providing great products and services. We believe that education is key to improving health, well-being, and lifting up our communities. Through these weekly sessions where we bring you the experts in the field of longevity, healthcare, and wellness, we hope to give you the tools and knowledge necessary and empower all of you to live longer, healthier lives. Tonight, I have the pleasure of speaking with the gorgeous Leanne Dunson. Leanne is an integrative practitioner and functional nutritionist who specializes in helping women, particularly those over 40, balance their hormones, build lean muscle, and achieve the body of their dreams. And if you don't believe it, just look at her, okay? Regardless of their age, with over 18 years of experience, she has supported thousands of women in overcoming their health challenges. Leanne combines her knowledge of nutrition, expertise in perimenopause, menopause, and holistic healing to help women snatch back their sexy through her workshops, podcasts, and online programs. And by the way, I hear, Leanne, you have 4 kids and 3 grandchildren, which I can't believe. So thank you so much. You are amazing. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that introduction. That was amazing. And I appreciate that. Yes, four children, 3 grandchildren, and 1 on the way. That's going to be December. So, yeah.
Well, you look amazing.
Well, thank
you.
you.
23. So I don't know how you fit those 4, but tell us a little about yourself, your background. I mean, I gave the brief intro, but how did you get into this? Just tell us a little about yourself and you dive in.
Well, about 20 years ago, I really started to dig into health and wellness. I was just more at that time, kind of the personal trainer side of it, loved to work out, really interested always in health. My mom says back when I was like younger, when I had period cramps, I wanted to go to someone to do, acupuncture on my feet. So I've always been like into the alternative medicine. And so what really though got me into becoming an integrated practitioner and really specializing in women's hormones was because of myself, what I went through. I, went through this all of a sudden, I started at actually a young age having hormonal issues. At 35, I started having hormonal issues that came along based upon probably a lot of stress, from having 4 kids and, my husband's in the entertainment business. There was a lot going on in California at that time. So I started having a lot of issues with myself, and I was going to doctors, trying to get answers. And everyone was just like, you look good, and just pass me on, hand me some antidepressants and things like that. And so that's what really, was the catalyst for me becoming an integrated practitioner, because I did not feel seen or heard. And my mission and my passion became for other women to feel seen and heard. And so I did my education, learning all about hormonal health, learning about nutrition and specific workouts for the women that were like myself. And that's where, like, I've been in this business now, is really specializing in hormones for the last 10 years based upon that. And so that's my mission, passion, to help women, to educate them, to become their own advocates. So they're not like myself that was going to doctor trying to get the answers, and so what I teach my women and educate them to become that, so they know how to talk to their doctors. They know what they should be doing, workout wise, nutrition wise. And that's what my program is all about.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And at the very end, we're going to tell people how they can find you. We're going to put that information out there. But for individuals who have never really heard about functional, and maybe they've heard about it, they don't quite understand what it is. Can you explain what functional medicine and nutrition is, and how is it different than traditional nutrition?
I like to use it in simple terms. That's how I usually speak, even though I can talk the whole science. I like for women to have that understanding. So the way that I look at it is functional nutrition is kind of like your bank account. So I look at it as putting in what we need to focus on is putting in more deposits than we are deductions. So functional nutrition is putting those deposits in, like, and having that understanding, like, what does protein actually do for our body? What is the reason around it? Carbohydrates and fats. And so really putting those deposits in. So when we have those deductions, like when we go out and we have fun or we do certain things or we don't get enough sleep at night, we don't feel those deductions because we in our day we've put so many deposits around that. And that's how I like to take a look at it with my women. So it's very simple. So we have that approach where we can look at it and we can kind of have that understanding of what we're doing. And so nutrition wise, we're really wanting to serve the body. So how can I serve the body at the highest? And that's what really like functional nutrition is about, is serving your body. And it's really individually based. So it's just not like this works for, it works different for what works for me might not work, the same for you. And so we have to have that understanding of how our body actually works and then serve our body at the highest.
I love that. And can you talk to us about how functional nutrition helps balance your hormones, especially for women over 40?
Yes. So a lot of times too, us as we're going, over 40, we're dealing also with, our cortisol is rising up. We're dealing with, unbalanced cortisol. We're also needing to be doing everything that is muscle sparing. So as we age, we are losing muscle. So we need to be focusing on everything that's muscle sparing. And so what that does is like getting enough protein, getting enough caloric intake. So, back in the day with me, like I grew up in diet culture. So it was all about, what do we do to get skinny and what do we do not to get fat? Like that was the whole thing. It was all around diet culture. And it really wasn't around like what served my body or anything. It was just around that. So really now taking that approach and finding out, like having an understanding what macronutrients are. I think macronutrients needs to be taught in like high school classes to girls. And I think it would take away from this whole diet culture when people didn't look at like, let me take back. If I tell someone you need to like track your food so you have an understanding what you're in, all of a sudden they get is, I don't want to track because they look at it's always taking away. But what if we reverse that we look at that we're actually, giving and we're not taking anything away. We're actually giving to our body. And so that's kind of like the approach that I like to look at it, that what is it that we can do to give to our body to operate at the highest level and to be vibrant. And with hormonal health, if you're not serving your body, you're not giving, you're going to be losing muscle. You're going to actually, your metabolic rate is going to drop. So we need to be focusing on those things more than ever right now, and most of the women that come to me, they're only getting, because they haven't been educated on this, are getting maybe 50 to 60 grams of protein in a day. And they just don't know how to do it. It's just that the education's not there because we've always been taught to take away everything instead of actually what can we do to actually put back into our body to actually get our body to that metabolic rate at the highest. So our metabolism is higher. And then that right there is going to help us hormonally.
I love that. Because thank you for touching on the protein intake. I think a lot of people stall in their weight loss journey and their health journeys because of protein. So I love that you touched on that, and we'll go explore that a little bit more. But this new frontier of gut microbiome, we're talking about it, you hear it in the news. Can you share with us what are some key foods that help with the gut microbiome, which also play a critical role in balancing hormones, right? We're
Right.
just stumbling upon that and exploring that. So can you touch on some foods that can help us with our gut microbiome?
Yes. So I believe in pro-metabolic foods. And so that really helps our gut microbiome. And so a lot of times I know women steer away from carbohydrates, but there's some amazing carbohydrates that are going to help us with our gut microbiome, help us with that serotonin, would be like potatoes. Our amazing thing, which I know when I tell women to eat a white potato, they go, no, I don't want to eat potatoes, and they're scared. So that's something that can help even with that. But also one thing I want to touch on that's really important when we're focusing on gut microbiome, we have to focus on cortisol. So the big thing is a lot of people aren't focusing on cortisol, and we cannot reset that gut microbiome if that's not the focus. So we need to focus on making sure our cortisol is balanced, because you could put all these, like you're putting in all these great foods, but if you don't touch on that and you're not resetting and helping get that balance, like all the good foods, you're not going to feel like you need to be felt. So you need to make sure that cortisol is in balance so your gut microbiome is able to reset. And then also with that is going to be, is I find a lot of people when it comes to like nutrition side, is they're also like, they're doing a lot of snacking all through the day. And one of the big things is you're just like, because they're not getting enough food with their main meals. So if you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you're getting enough food that's like satisfying for you, you're getting enough macronutrients that your body needs, you're not going to want to keep snacking because you're satisfied. Your body's given what it needs and the body feels in balance. So one of the things I find that people mess up their gut microbiome, they mess up their digestion, is because they're constantly snacking. So they don't allow their body and their food to actually digest as the food needs to digest. And the body, and then allow those hunger cues like it's supposed to come on and say, all right, it's time to eat.
I love that. I love that you touched on cortisol too. So I know it as a stress hormone. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on cortisol, because when my doctor put me on hormone therapy, that's the first thing she said. She's like, well, we can put you on hormones, but it's not going to do any good if your cortisol is not in check. So I take DHEA for the cortisol, but can you elaborate a little bit more on cortisol and what we can do to bring down our cortisol levels?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. Like, first of all, one of the things that I recommend, and I know that we have been taught like the whole fasting, and this is my belief on this, and this is what I found from working with, thousands of women, is that and in midlife, so if we're going to talk about women, 35 and over, one thing that we need to be really careful about is if you tend to feel that you've been in fight or flight, which I'm going to say most of us have, and two, as our hormones are declining, we automatically are, put in a stressful situation. Even if you don't have stress in your life, it's stressful on the body. These hormonal changes, we're riding these roller coaster rides, estrogen, progesterone, is like all over the place. So with that also, the cortisol is going to be, usually it's very unbalanced. I find a lot of women that come into my space, most of them are actually low instead of even high cortisol. Because if you've been in a high state in fight or flight for a long period of time, those adrenals tank out. And so then you're in this low cortisol state. It's a little bit harder to get low cortisol to where it needs to be compared to like high cortisol. But what I love to do is, first of all, I like to have women actually eat. And it's one thing that scares people, but you've got to eat to really balance that. And you need to be doing that with the right amount of protein, carbohydrates, and fat with a balanced meal. Because if you're just eating, like people start off in the morning, let's just say like you're starting off the morning and you're eating, I know it's a lot of people's favorite, avocado toast, without protein, you're getting this spike. And so what we want to do is we want to put a balanced meal. We're going to put like a carbohydrate and we put a fat. So what happens is that spike is natural. So if anyone tells you that food doesn't spike, it's always going to spike your blood sugar. But what we want to do is have it spike and come and then into a balance. And when it does that, then it's going to help us to not have this cortisol fluctuation, and it's going to keep the body nice and happy with that. And if you want to add some herbs with that too, I love doing some ashwagandha. L-theanine is really great. Doing some Ayurvedic herbs are amazing for that. But that's what I like to help support the body, while though you have to do the other things. So you can't just take the herbs and the supplements. You've got to be doing the lifestyle factors too. And one of the things, like I said, like eating within, I find women that can really help that cortisol, eating within like that 45 minutes to an hour after waking up and getting that perfect balanced meal, that really helps. Eating every, about like getting 3 good meals with protein, carbs, and fat. And then you can add in a snack, so that right there helps, making sure that you're, sleeping. So that's a huge one. And it's really hard sometime in midlife, to sleep like that. But that's when those, Ayurvedic herbs and some adaptogens can really help with that too.
Love it. Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about sugar. Okay.
Okay.
I know when I was pregnant, that was my baseline for how sugar affects my body. Because your hormones are all over the place. As soon as I would have a candy bar or something, I would just crash and I wouldn't feel good and I would feel really down the next day. So can you talk to us about how sugar impacts our hormones and what role it plays in regulating our hormones, and any tips on managing our sugar cravings?
Yes. Well, one thing, I love, if we're going to talk about we'll first start managing your sugar cravings, because that just like caught me when you said that. It's one of the reasons why, and I will touch on this, is GLP-1s. I love that for my women because it's really helps turn that food noise on. And I know if some of y'all are here, like that night, the granola that speaks to you at night when everything gets quiet, for us busy mamas or even, entrepreneurs, like all of a sudden at night it gets quiet. And then all we hear is that noise, like you need to eat granola. That was me. So I'm sorry, I'm the granola girl. I always be like, I need to eat granola. So that right there, it turns on that noise. And so one thing, that's why I love GLP-1s and using that. And I know we're going to touch on some other things with that a little bit on, but I love that for that. One of the things when you are getting those balanced meals that we were talking about, it does help with not wanting that sugar craving. Usually when you're wanting and craving that sugar, your body's needing that energy. It's like feeling for the energy. And so not all like sugar is bad. So the processed part of sugar, yes, the candy, the cookies, all of that part. And I don't like to label food good and bad, but it doesn't serve you. That is a deduction into your body. So it's not going to serve you at the highest. So what we have to do then and look is we feed our body what our body wants. The body's wanting energy. So get a balanced meal. Be good with fruits. Be good with carbohydrates and the right amounts. They're going to be beneficial for you. It's going to give your body what your body's needing. So when you're having those sugar cravings, it's just a way that your body's saying things to you like, I need that energy. I want that. Or it's just sometimes it becomes a habit. And that's where a GLP-1s come in play and helps reverse and let you work on that habit. It quiets that noise while you're able to work on those habits.
I love that. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And let's talk about inflammation a little bit. I know in the world of longevity, inflammaging is a term that we all throw around. And I know there's two things I like to do in the morning. First thing in the morning, I like to get my turmeric drink out. I mixed turmeric with very high curcumin and a little bit of lemon juice and water. I chug that. And then I like to take an ice cold shower. I hear that's very good for inflammation. So can you talk to us about inflammation, what role it plays in weight gain, and how can functional nutrition reduce it?
Yes. So what I found with a lot of when that comes, they come to me, they're dealing sometimes their weight gain is all it is an inflammatory response. It's a lot of inflammation that's going on in their body. And because a lot of people, when I'm talking about like, people are like, I can't lose like the 10 pounds, that a lot of that has to do with inflammation. But to going back, and I'll start like cortisol, not eating enough for your body, keeping your body in that fight or flight. Also with putting a lot of stress on our body, doing certain, like we've been talking about workouts, that's putting a lot of stress on our body. That's going to cause inflammation. And so I love what you do in the morning. That's an amazing thing to do to help with, that inflammatory response that's going on. I also like, let's say GLP-1s for that too, but also with nutrition, when the body is wanting to be in balance. So that's all the body's ever wanting to do. So it's like, get me in balance, get me in balance. So when you are using nutrition, getting the right amount of protein, carbs, and fats, and also not eating ultra processed food. So we want to be putting whole foods in our body that's giving our body the micronutrients that our body needs too, is going to help with that inflammatory response too that goes on. Because a lot of times people are walking around, and I will tell you that women that I see, they're eating gluten, they're eating processed food and gluten, I don't say that gluten's all bad, but what happens is with gluten, there is sprayed glyphosates. And so what I find, and if I do like GI mapping or something like that, and I look at my women, I see in GI mapping, it's really like the zonulin levels were high. So they're actually mimicking, and they're coming like celiac. And the reason why that is because of the glycophages. So the glycophages are causing this inflammatory response that's going on in the body, and that's causing a lot of inflammation too. So what I tell people is like, let's go to a whole food nutrition. Let's go for a whole food diet, start to do that. And you can still put in some of the, the fun stuff that you want, but let's look at that to reduce that inflammatory response that's happening in the body. And then two, that also gives you to see, like, sometimes we might have a little bit of intolerance with some foods that we're having, and we can take a look at it and then that know, because that will also have that inflammatory response in the body too, that you might be having a little bit of sensitivity to something. So taking a look at that too, when you start to do a whole food nutrition, journaling, looking at things like, how do you feel? What I found is that we, in the whole diet culture as women, we've learned to turn off what we hear, what our body, we learn to not listen to our body. So I have my women like turn on like an alarm, because we've been taught so long, we've been taught to turn off, like, I always say food noise isn't good, but hunger cues is good to use in the right way. Like, we need to eat, we need to get our protein, we need to get, our carbohydrate, we need our meals in to fill our body. But like, do a check-in with yourself, set an alarm in your body a couple of times during the day and develop that habit again to listen, like, after I eat, like, how did that make me feel? Do I feel energized? Do I feel good? And so that's how you can kind of see, how is that food actually serving you at the highest level? Because maybe oatmeal doesn't get me energized and make me feel good, but for you, it might make you feel amazing. So like checking in with your body and seeing what your body is needing, it just turns that on, and that's where you become your own advocate too.
You talked about energy. So can
Mhm.
you talk to us about what causes that fatigue and loss of energy? And do you have any go-to supplements with women who are struggling with fatigue and energy loss?
Yeah, a lot of times too, going back to, it's really that, if I look back at people, they're not eating calorically what their body really needs to. They're not fueling their body properly. So I would make sure, like, I always tell people we need to spend a little bit of time to be intentional, to become intuitive. Because if we've turned that off for a really long time, we can't be intuitive. And I love to be to be intuitive with things, but so we have to be a little bit intentional for a little bit to then become that intuitive. So really, like I said, listening to your body, doing that's going to really help with that. And just like turning on, like I said, turning on those cues again, listening to your body really does make a difference.
Mm. So, can you tell us a little bit about how functional nutrition can help reduce symptoms of perimenopause and menopause? You touch on that.
Yes. So the other thing still, and I know I keep will say this about the cortisol part because it just plays a big role in women in menopause and perimenopause. But the one thing we need to focus on is making sure, I just say protein. Protein is king. So we need to make sure, I like to see women getting a minimum of 100 grams of protein in their diet, a minimum. As we get older, we actually need more because we need to be stimulating the muscle a little bit more with, getting enough leucine that we're getting in our body. But also using, like I said, protein is very important. Balancing your hormones too, because if the body doesn't feel already it's in a stressful situation, and you put more stress on by not getting enough, macronutrients that your body needs, you're not sleeping, and you're doing like, 7 days a week of like HIIT workouts, and you're doing all the things that's really stressing your body. And then you're not getting enough caloric intake with that hormonally right there, you can never be balanced. You can take all the HRT, you can do all the things, but until you really meet that nutrition and you're getting enough protein, carbs, and fats and enough caloric intake for your body, then it's really hard for the body to be in balance hormonally and anything. So I always tell people the side benefit of weight loss is the body imbalance.
Love that you're touching on food intake. I keep hearing that over and over, how important it is, because your body's in a high stress state when you're not getting enough calories. And that's what I'm
Right.
hearing. And it's just as important to get enough calories as it is to, have that imbalance in order to lose the weight. So thank you for touching on that. Hydration's another big one. I just recently read a stat where 90% of adults in their 50s are dehydrated. Their bodies are dehydrated. And I've also learned that GLP-1s, you lose the sensation of thirst while you're on GLP-1 medication. So it's super important for people to stay hydrated. Can you touch on the importance of hydration in functional nutrition, and how can we optimize water intake?
Yes. So a lot of times, we've been in the whole past, we've been told, drink a gallon of water, drink this amount of water. But a lot of times too, we have to be really careful. So drinking all the water, we are also peeing out a lot of our minerals. So we need to be replenishing that. So my recommendation is to do some type of electrolyte, or you can do a natural electrolyte if you want to, like get some Celtic sea salt, put a little bit of that in, some, you can put lemon in there, and that kind of helps like with that taste. But you need enough amount of sodium and the right ratio of sodium, potassium in there, and some magnesium to really help replenish the body. So I've had women that have gone on like these big programs and they've done like the gallon of water, and they feel so fatigued, they feel dehydrated. So even though we're putting all this water in, we can be dehydrating our body in that way. So I highly recommend to do some, like I said, some type of electrolyte. There's a lot of really good ones out there. I like, Elements have one, Relight has one, but like I said, you can make your own too. And the way that you can put a little bit of potassium in is you can use some like cream of tartar, and that's a site of to use for potassium.
Mhm. And can you tell us about bloating? Like, since we're on the water topic, what causes bloating in women, and what are simple food swaps that we can make that make a big difference when it comes to bloating?
So one of the things too, I'll tell you, is the ultra processed food. And you've got to really, we have to become detectives in this time of our life. But we've got to become detectives and look at the ingredients that we're having. So I will have a lot of women that will come and they'll be like doing like protein shakes. And I see it a lot, like people will talk like, I'm trying to get my protein in. So they're going to this like ultra processed food too. And they're using these like certain proteins or doing these like already made drinks and certain things. But there's a lot of things in there that you're not realizing that's causing a lot of gut distress. So quality matters. So we really, even though we're wanting to get protein, we want to get quality protein in there. So that's one of the things, like look at some of the ingredients and see, are these irritants to your gut? Sometimes what I'll find out is, we're all about like the fiber and get tons of fiber, but sometimes like that amount of fiber for your body actually can cause bloating. So you want to be really careful with that, to look at like and see like, am I having too much fiber for your body? And that can cause a lot of bloating too. But also what I touched about before, you might be having some type of irritant. Like that's why I say go off like gluten for a little bit and eat the whole foods and see, how does your body, does the bloating go away? Did you take out some of these things that have been processed and you feel better? That's one thing too that really helps with that, is like I said, getting in tune with your body and what's happening, seeing like, how do you feel after you're certain with meals? I also love to help with the bloating and to really digest your food. I love walks after you eat. It really helps with digestion. It's great for cortisol. So like I have always next to, I have a walking pad, or I go outside if it's nice. So always just like get like a little bit, like a 10-minute walk after you eat really helps with that bloating too. Another thing too, you can add in if you're having some digestive issues. I love a really good digestive enzyme. You can add that in your food while your body is actually healing and really help you processing that food.
Since you're touching on protein quite a bit, and you just brought up bloating, I know whey protein makes me bloat and feel very bloated. What are your, I guess, what do you recommend? Do you recommend whey protein, plant-based protein? Is it just based off of individual preference? What is your
I
recommendation?
think, well, if someone is vegan or vegetarian, then obviously the plant protein. I personally, I'm I was a vegan for many years, but now I'm not, but I love beef protein isolate. I get from a biohacking company. I love beef protein isolate. That's my favorite because no bloating, nothing goes on with that. So a lot of my women who are having issue with whey, and they're not wanting to do, if they're not doing a plant protein, I go to a beef protein isolate. But like I said, quality matters with any of that. No matter if you're doing a plant protein, you got to watch out. No matter if it says it's vegan, vegetarian, like you've got to watch and put what the ingredients are on that too. Look at, is it third party tested? You know, we don't want in plant protein salad could be a lot of like arsenic based upon like the rice and stuff that they're using. So you've got to look at these things and see, and you know, look at these companies. Are they doing third party testing? You know, so that's one thing that I always look for. If I'm looking for something, whether if I'm looking for whey and you love whey, a lot of women do really well with whey. If you're looking for a whey, you want to make sure, is it grass fed and grass finished? Not just grass fed, because if you're buying, if you're getting a company that's like in a place that has seasons and it's going to be cold, those cows aren't going to be grass finished. So they're not constantly fed grass because they don't have access to it. So ask the company, I vet, and I'll go, are you, you know, look, go get your, if your whey protein is from in California, they're going to have grass all year round. So those are little things that you look at. And like I said, third party testing is so important. Look to see if the company is doing that.
Oh my God, I didn't even know about that grass finished.
Sorry.
I've only heard of grass fed. I didn't even know about grass finished.
Well,
Wow.
it's just like if, and grass finish is like with the beef and all that too, but you want to know, is this cow fed? If it's giving you the whey and everything, is this cow constantly, because they'll say it's grass fed, but is it grass fed all year round?
Makes total sense to me. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just never thought about it. Thank you for that. Thanks for that recommendation. Okay, so let's shift gears and start talking about exercise. I know a lot of people want to know, what do I do, especially while I'm on GLP-1 medications. A lot of people are taking that right now. And you tend to lose muscle mass when you're on these medications with any sort of weight loss program. So maybe you could touch on that. But what types of exercises do you recommend for women who are looking to build lean muscle in their 40s and beyond?
One of the big one that I went, strength training. It's huge. I am perimenopause and menopause certified so I am going to be really big on progressive overload strength training. We've got to stimulate that muscle. And so it has to be something that is progressive overload. And what is progressive overload? It means like, let's say that, you know, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do some shoulder presses. I'm going to do 12 reps of shoulder presses with 20 pounds. And then the next week, I'm going to go do that same exercise, but I'm going to go maybe 13 reps with the same weight, or I'm going to do the same reps and actually take up the weight. So progressive overloading is you are doing the same type of exercises, the same style. You're doing that over for like maybe say a 4-week period. What I find women that tend not to be able to build muscle the same, they're never doing the progressive overload. They're just jumping around. And this is my theory, is random workouts give you random results. So I'm all about like, hey, let's just get focused. Let's be intentional, you know? And so getting in that track, seeing what you're doing, getting progressive overload, you know, stimulating that muscle. And you should be, to be able to do things that are muscle sparing, those last 2 reps need to be like where you're challenged. You need to be like, I don't want to do this last 2 reps. Like you need to be challenged with that. And that's going to really help you build that muscle. It takes us more, especially as we get a little bit older, it takes us more to stimulate that muscle for muscle growth. So we have to stimulate it with getting those last 2 reps. But the one thing I see women make a big mistake in midlife is you're just rushing to work out. You're rushing in between the sets. You're just like supersetting everything, doing all that. There needs to be a rest period because we do not have the same stress response because our estrogen is taking that roller coaster. It's dipping down. So we are not as resilient to stress. So we need to give our body a little bit of break. Like I say, you know, you can take like, you know, 60 to at least 90 seconds in between those sets to be able to let your body, you know, go back, feel good, and be able to hit it again. But like I said, the big thing is too, is stimulating that muscle. I love doing that. And I kind of take my women away from HIIT and I call it sit. So sit workout is kind of like HIIT, but we're going to go in and we're going to do, for an example, like if you're going to do, I'm just like, you don't have to sprint. I love to sprint, but you don't have to sprint. You can do it on elliptical. You can do it on a bike. You could do jumping jacks, jump rope, whatever you wanted to do, what was able for your body. And you're going to go in, you're going to go 20 seconds. And I call it breathless training. So you want to get in, you want to be breathless. Like, you just like, okay, that was hard. I don't want to go past the 20 seconds. You let your heart rate come all the way back down. And then you go back again and you go in and out. We want to do everything. We want to get in and out when we're like that. We don't want to put more stress than the body needs. So we go in, we do that. We then, like I said, let our heart rate. And then we do that for maybe like 6-8 rounds. And that's so amazing for midlife women, and to really help with that fat loss too, if you're looking for that. And it won't cause where we're going to go into those cortisol issues, putting you in that fight or flight. Exercise will automatically cause your cortisol to rise, but when you've done the right way, it's a good rise. Like, cortisol can be really good. It's very beneficial, but it's just when you're doing too much and doing it the wrong way at this time when the body's in stress, where it causes issue.
And how often do you recommend that we exercise to maintain the muscle mass and boost our metabolism?
I always tell people, though, first is, what can you be consistent at? Everything about anything, nutrition, workouts, taking a GLP-1, taking a supplement, it's not going to ever work unless you're consistent, and, giving it time too. But what can you be consistent at? But what my recommendation would be is, a minimum amount of like 2 times a week on that. I personally love 4 times. And I love women to actually hit the lower body 3 times a week. So that's my big thing, is if you can hit that 3 times a week. And so, like, let's say like if you're doing like a 4-day, you can get like, 2 upper body, and then you're getting, 2 of a lower body. And then maybe 1 time with that upper body, you're actually adding a little bit in of the lower body. So it's kind of like a full body plan. And then throwing in that sit training. And the sit training can be, and I'll tell you one thing, I personally, like, some people do really well with sit training before they work out, because it gets that adrenaline going. So if you're feeling tired, it's because it's not going to tax you. So it gets you going. It's like, ooh, now you're ready for a workout. Sometimes I find that women do better that way than actually doing it after, because after they're like, all right, in 2, we're thinking of the million things that we've got to do. We're like, I got to go run. I got to go do this. So you can throw that in either before or after, and, work out 4 times. I don't recommend women working out 7 days a week. The biggest mistake is that when you're growing that muscle is in the recovery. It's the recovery period. It's the recovery period of you resting. It's the recovery period. And that means, I don't mean like sitting on your couch, watching, Netflix all day. It means just like after recovery, like walking, going for a hike. You can do any of that, but you've got to let your body then recover. But recovery also means feeding your body. If you want to avoid muscle loss, you've got to feed the body enough protein too, and enough caloric intake, because you have to be able to get that leucine in the body. It's so important.
And a lot of menopausal women or premenopausal complain about the pooch around the belly pooch that you start. What causes that? Are there any exercises, any supplements, anything that you can do for that?
No exercises are going to take that away. One thing that I will say, I will say that peptides, one thing has made a huge difference. So when we are going through this whole time of menopausal, we were becoming less insulin sensitive. It's just a part. We're becoming very less insulin sensitive. We're becoming very insulin resistant. So insulin resistant is when we start seeing, it's like I'll tell you, even with myself, I always had a flat belly. Like, I'd never worried about weight gain around my belly. It might've been other places, never around there. And then all of a sudden I was like, what happened? Like, and all of a sudden just started coming there. I'm like, I do not recognize this girl at all in the mirror. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. And a lot of it had to do with being insulin resistance, and nothing that I did. And this is going to kind of go into the GLP-1 I want to talk about, but nothing I did I mean, nothing ever stuck. Like I could even like take all this stuff and I would go, oh, I think I'm in a good place. Like maybe I focused on my cortisol, putting the puzzle pieces back together, focus on my cortisol. And I think, oh, I'm in a good place. Like I lost it. And then it would like come right back. Nothing ever kept it and like really made the change until I started integrating GLP-1s into my program. And that's when I started noticing the difference in that belly fat. And just like, it's just kind of like, I call it the menopause thickening. It's just like all of a sudden we go from like just this thing that we never knew ever was never there before. And all of a sudden we just don't feel comfortable. It's just about that. It's just like, we don't feel comfortable. It's not, we don't we're like, I've never had that before. And so we want to do something about it. But most of the women that come to me, they've done everything. They're doing the nutrition. They're nailing their workouts. They're like, I do not know what's going on. And that's what's going on. They're becoming very insulin resistant. And I found that you might not even see it on the blood work, but it's happening in the body. And so that's where like coming in and bringing that GLP-1s that really helps with that insulin resistance. It helps reduce that inflammatory response that's going on, because that's a lot of that weight too is inflammation. It's too because we've gone from like we're in this like stress state. We're estradiol, progesterone's all over the place. We're in this stress state, and that causes issues with insulin right there. Our cortisol, our insulin, our adrenals, everything's going on. And so with taking in that GLP-1, it really does help that. And like I said, nutrition. So the whole thing plays a role, but that's one thing. And then getting the right, workouts and like we said, nutrition. It's all this is why I say we as women, we're very complex. We have a bunch of different puzzle pieces, and it's just not one thing. We got to put all the pieces back together to get that beautiful masterpiece that we're all looking for.
Thanks for mentioning that. So you mentioned GLP-1s. Are there other peptides that you use or you recommend to incorporate as part of your routine, and especially when it comes to exercising? So what do you recommend?
So the peptides that I love, like I've taken semaglutide, I've taken tirzepatide. I love Smorlin. It's what I currently take right now. I love it. I've been seeing really good results with that. So it's actually kind of one of my favorites right now. I love that. I love NAD. Plus I use NAD. So a little backstory, I dealt with severe mold toxicity coming from a house that we had found mold. We ended up moving out for that house, but I had one of the roughest years of my life having to get rid of that. And so coming out, and I started using NAD, and I use B12 weekly. That made a huge difference in me. I went from like not feeling like I had energy to all of a sudden I would take my NAD and I'd be like, it was like a light switch went on. And I would be like, this is the best thing. So I tell everyone, I'm like, if you're dealing with any of that, like NAD is the way to go. Like it's amazing. And then I love women to add, B12 with their GLP-1. It really helps offset any, side effects if they're feeling nauseated or anything, or energy. It really offsets that too.
Okay, so we touched on the exercise, some of the peptides we can incorporate while we're doing our exercises. Now, let's go to winding down and stretching. What are some stretches that you recommend to help with mobility, or any mobility exercises you recommend for better flexibility and joint health?
One thing is kind of funny. So last night I actually did a whole, like I go to this guy and he stretches me for like about an hour, and it's torture. Like I tell him, I'm like, I pay you for this. And it's like, I'm screaming. It's like seriously torture. I call it the torture chamber. But we were talking last night and he said, so many people they don't understand that stretching, they're doing it all wrong. You've got to stay in that stretch for 2 minutes. So no matter what you do, you have to stay in it for that 2 minutes. So a lot of people just like, I stretch, and then they start to feel it and they're like, I'm out of here, like done with it. So, but you've got to really keep that stretch for that 2 minute mark. It doesn't have to be done every single day. I like to do a little bit of like dynamic stretching before I work out, kind of like movement, getting my body moving and stuff like that. And then what I tend to do is sometimes like, at night, I'll do some like those like ouch, like, like getting my body into that 2-minute stretch where I feel tight. I find a lot of women, we tend to hold our stress in our hips, where it's like hold it in our hips, our, lower back. And a lot of that, we're getting in our psoas and everything. So a lot of like really getting into that stretching, I highly recommend if you're feeling like really stressed out, you're having like anxiety and you're feeling stressed, like go do the 2-minute stretching, get into like doing the frog pose, like doing, getting in there, getting that quad stretch and doing it for like the 2 minutes is like the best.
I love the pigeon. It just stretches
Oh
open
yeah.
everything. I love it. Thanks for touching on that. So let's shift gears and spend the last few minutes that we have talking about GLP-1 medications. I know we've been going back and forth talking about microdosing GLP-1s. Can you touch on that? And you highly recommend it. Can you touch on the benefits of microdosing GLP-1 medication and who might benefit from that?
So I've been microdosing for like over about 20 months now with some of my clients. And so what I find women, and okay, I want to go back, like say microdosing doesn't have to be like the exact like dosage. We're all different in that way, but I will say most women pretty much you get kind of like on a standard. But one thing that I find is women that come to me, like I said, they're like, I have done all the things. I'm working out, I'm getting my nutrition in, but I've got this that won't go away. And so those are the women that I think microdosing that are like trying to get like those, they're like just feeling that they're feeling fluffy. Let's just put it that way. They're feeling fluffy. They're having inflammation. They're having brain fog. It's amazing on brain fog. I mean, like it's totally switched me. And even like a lot of my women that are dealing, all of a sudden they're getting in perimenopause and menopause, and they all of a sudden they have like the ADHD. They're like, I just all of a sudden turned like I have ADHD. Like that right there, great for microdosing. I have women PCOS, amazing for PCOS. I got into microdosing, and I'll tell you why. I got it in it for brain reasons because my grandmother had dementia. So I do everything that is going to be preventative. So that's why I love longevity medicine, because I'm doing everything to prevent what I've seen that's gone before me. I've seen what's gone before my mom and like joints and all of that. Like I want to do everything. And that's where microdosing comes in. I say I will probably be microdosing for like cycling in and out forever and using peptides, like doing it, cycling it in and needing it and switching, maybe from some glutide, tirzepatide, whatever else they're going to come up with too. But I love microdosing for women like that are like, you know what? They don't have like this large amount of weight to lose, but they're wanting to be able, they have a little bit like the fluff, but they're also having a lot of inflammation and they're having the brain fog. I have found too, basically, even with myself and looking at other women's blood work from being on a GLP-1, it maximizes their hormone optimization. It is amazing for that. And I know even there's like a study that came out actually showing that by 30%, it actually optimizes by 30%. So we want to be doing all that, so that's where I love that for the microdosing part. And, and if you don't have a lot of muscle on you, you haven't really started that journey yet, and you have a lot of weight to lose, then that's where I think maybe like not doing the microdosing and actually needing a larger dose is where, but taking that larger dose, using it and developing all these other habits that we were talking about and start building muscle. Start building muscle. So when you decide if you want to go in, when you're ready to go into like that maintenance dose that you want to go into, you are already going to be metabolically sound. So you don't have to worry about like the weight coming back on, because if you're metabolically sound, you use these as a tool. Use a GLP-1 as a tool to get you back into being metabolically sound, being strong there, building that muscle. So when you go into these lower doses, you can go on these lower doses and not have that rebound effect. And so that's, I think, is like super important, like to have that understanding. But I love microdosing. It has been a game changer for me. And that's why I shout about it all the time. I've watched my clients, I've watched women who I've had, like people who've had colitis. I've had women who with RA, PCOS, like all that, to all of a sudden be like, this is giving me back my life.
I honestly think GLP-1s will be the longevity drug, the drug of our century, and the
Oh
longevity
yeah.
moving forward. I mean, there's just, it plays a role in almost all aspects of your systems and the processes in your body. It's fantastic with inflammation, neurodegenerative disease, cardiac health. I mean, my gosh, it's such a, thank you for mentioning that. And how about for people who are on the other end of the spectrum, they don't want to lose weight and they're scared of losing weight and muscle mass. What do you recommend for them as far as microdosing?
Well, I think they can still microdose. I mean, that was me. I mean, I will tell you, I'm going to be completely honest. What stopped me from doing it, even after, like, I had a medical provider that kept saying, like, you should microdose when I was going through all this. I was so scared to lose my appetite. I'm going to be honest. I thought, because I'm scared. What if I can't get enough protein in and I train this and I'm going to start losing muscle because we hear all the noise. I have found through all my research, actually GLP-1s can be very anabolic. It actually helps drive those amino acids into the muscle. So they become very anabolic. I actually am stronger than I was before. When you lower inflammation, first of all, you lower inflammation, your body's going to feel stronger, you're going to feel better. So that's another thing. But I find that I have never, when you do the right dosage and you're getting that micro dosing, I've never lost I've lost the food noise. The granola doesn't call me at night anymore, but I still want to get my food in. I still want to get my protein. I still want to get, my carbs and the fats and whatever that my body is calling what it needs, but I just don't have the food noise anymore. And then reducing and feeling like that inflammation gone, it makes you more motivated, that you want to do more and you feel like working out. I have women that come to me and they're just like, they've done all the things and they feel hopeless and they're like, nothing's working. So you know what they do? They go, well, forget it. Nothing's working. So I might as well not do anything anymore. And so doing a microdose and giving these women back, like feeling more confident, feeling better, reducing that inflammation, turning off that food noise, from them. And then they all of a sudden they're like, I want to work out again. I want to, eat better again because they start feeling better. And so that's why I love the microdosing with, and that part with women who, they're kind of scared. They're like, hey, I don't want any of that. But I have women that are like the same thing, like with me, like they've had their mothers or their grandmothers that had Alzheimer's or dementia, and they want to do that. They have RA or they've had PCOS for so many years, and they're just wanting something to really give them a leg up. And that's where microdosing comes in with that too. And I mean, I have a girl that's been microdosing a very small amount to get amazing results with that. And she's been using it for about a year. And she's like, I'm going to keep using this in such a small amount. At the beginning, she had to go higher, but then coming down to a small amount. And she's like, I never want to go off this. This gave me my life back.
Someone asked, oh, the message went away. Let's see. She took it away. Never mind. So while you're on GLP-1 medications, are there any dietary restrictions or food considerations that we should have while we're taking these medications? What do you recommend?
One thing that you definitely need to make sure, like I said, protein. No matter what you're doing, because we do want to be everything muscle sparing. So we want to be doing things that are muscle sparing while you're taking it. So you need to be, like I said, be a little bit intentional, spend some time. So what my recommendation would be when you go onto a GLP-1, spend like 4 days on just like tracking your food. Use a free app, MyFitnessPal, track your food, see where you're at. Because making sure that you're not starting this and you're like eating 900 calories, and you're not getting any protein. So do that. So then you just see what you need to do to pivot, what you need to do. It doesn't mean you have to track every day or do anything like that, but like just get a little bit intentional, see where you need to go. Making sure that you're getting enough protein, you're getting enough caloric intake for your body. So the body can feel in balance. So it's using this GLP-1, as a tool. And that's like super important when it comes to nutrition. I would say too, is you really want to, avoid eating like really fatty foods, greasy foods can sometimes too. It's not great for the digestive system when you're on a GLP-1, or even if you're not on a GLP-1, but definitely if you're on a GLP-1, you want to do that. Anything like super, like we were talking about sugar before, like you don't want to be eating like ultra processed, with foods that are high in sugar, like the cakes and all that. You can have that a little bit, but what I find is really when you get on that GLP-1, it really turns off the noise for that. And I'm going to tell you, like, I am a Southern girl. I love my sweets. And I thought that for the rest of my life, I would have to eat something sweet after each one of my meals. And I'm like, that's just me. I'm from Kentucky. That's just what we do. We were raised like that. And I realized it wasn't, it was just like in my head. It was just that food noise. So now I never have that craving that I need sugar after I eat, so really that really helps with that balancing out. But I would just really make sure, add some whole food nutrition in your body, making sure you're getting enough protein. Like I said, 100 grams minimum. That is so important when you're on a GLP-1. Get 100 grams minimum, making sure you get those 3 meals in. If you do not feel hungry, maybe you need to put an alarm on your phone and it was like, you need to eat, like eat now. So that I would definitely, do that. If you tend to like be one that maybe you've done intermittent fasting and you've been doing like these like really long days, you're eating in these like short windows of time, and you have turned off the hunger cues in your body for so long that you don't even have those anymore. That's where it's going to be really important that you actually turn those alarms on and say, all right, I know I need to eat this because I want these results, and I want these results to be lasting. I don't want this to be, I never want to go back to square one. I want these results to be lasting. This is going to take me on for years and years and years. And I'm going to invest in this time, be intentional so I can have this for years to come.
I love that. I'm reading Summer's comment. This kind of education will help people not suffer like our parents and grandparents did during midlife. Thank you so much. I mean, this was so informative. And I like to believe that aging is something that we can slow down, even reverse on a cellular level. So this was just so informative, and I appreciate your time. So can you tell us about, thank you. No, seriously, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us about your services? Do you do virtual services, and where can people find you if they're looking for you?
You can find me on Instagram, and it's at Leanne Dunson. And I have a program that I do specifically for using a GLP-1. So we focus on nutrition, and we also focus on specific workouts that are those progressive overload. So that's based upon you where you're able to be consistent at. And it is a personalized, so it's just not any like a cookie cutter plan. It actually will personalize your macronutrients according to what your body needs, where you're at. I'll meet you where you're at, and also meet you where you're at with your workouts.
Okay. Can you spell your Instagram?
It's so it's at, and it's LeeAnnenDunson.
All right, I posted it in the comment. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Leanne. My gosh, did you guys love this session or what? This is awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. I love it.
Yeah, we hope that you can come back, and thank you for touching on the microdosing. That's coming very, very soon. I am so excited to offer the microdosing for people who don't meet the BMI requirements, because I think GLP-1s are the drug of the century. I think everyone should incorporate it if they meet the criteria. So thank you for touching on that. And thank you all for joining us on our weekly educational series. We hope to see you guys back next week. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you for
Much love
having
to
me.
all of you.